First, it was Daron Payne. Then, the entire damn Commanders team seemingly got ejected from finding any ability to be able to play consistently and snap their losing streak, which now stands at 5 games. All of that more right now on Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and now the #1 sports podcast network around. I'm David Harrison, your guy on the ground covering the Washington Commanders for WUSA 9, also writing for Commanders on SI, and you can find me on X at dharrison82. Coming up on today's episode, we are going to break down immediate reactions, post-game reactions to the Washington Commanders' 5th straight loss, another big one, this time to the Detroit Lions. All that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And it's brought to you by FanDuel, where right now, new customers, you can still get $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And you can use those bonus bets anywhere across the app. So FanDuel continuing to offer one heck of a deal as far as I'm concerned. I, of course, am not a new FanDuel user, so I can't take advantage of that. But if you haven't done it yet and you want to try to get in on that a little bit, again, just gamble responsibly is the only thing that I ask you. So just when you thought things couldn't get worse, coming off of week 9, giving up just boatloads of points to the Seattle Seahawks, the Washington Commanders not only come in and do the same thing to the Detroit Lions or with the Detroit Lions, but they also lose even more players. So it was raining out here in Northwest Stadium on Sunday afternoon, and it was pouring on the Washington Commanders. Cornerback Trey Amos, the rookie cornerback, injured for a second time in 3 weeks, basically. Second quarter, 13-yard touchdown run. Jahmyr Gibbs initially was listed as questionable with an ankle injury, but later on was ruled out. So we'll have to see how that develops moving into the next week. Linebacker Ale Cajo suffered a concussion in the opening kickoff of the third quarter on the coverage team. Also ruled out of the game. Running back Chris Rodriguez Jr. left the field with a shoulder injury and was questionable to return, never did return. And linebacker Frankie Luvu left the game as well on a second quarter touchdown run. The same play, actually, that Trey Amos was injured on. Frankie Luvu was also injured on shoulder. He did return to the game, but I will tell you, seeing him post-game nursing that shoulder just a little bit. So we'll have to see how that is in the light of day and after the adrenaline wears off and all that. And not to be outdone, cornerback Jonathan Jones also left the game, was returned, did get listed questionable to return, did end up returning, but you still have cornerback Jonathan Jones getting banged up. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more players to add to the ever-growing list of Washington Commanders that just continue to get beat up by this 2025 NFL season. It's just been one of those years for the Washington Commanders. So again, when it rains, it pours, all those things. And oh, by the way, not injured, but ejected from the game, Daron Payne. And you know, I've been asked a couple times already by people like, what's up with the Daron Payne slapping Amon-Ra St. Brown? I don't know what Amon-Ra St. Brown said to him, but what's up with him slapping another player, across the face, across the helmet, whatever. Javon Kinlaw was flagged for unsportsmanlike conduct for an action, for an infraction. Quan Martin was flagged for unsportsmanlike conduct, personal foul, all these things. And really, guys, listen, like we all talk about it, players talk about it, coaches talk about it. You know, you got to take the lessons from a loss, you got to flush everything else, and you got to move forward. And I think that mantra stands true, and I think that is the intention with every defeat, every loss that a team suffers. But the fact of the matter is, they're human beings. We're all human beings. And just like you have a hard time, right? I see it in the text messages. I see it in the YouTube comments. You know, first quarter, defense gives up a score where the offense goes down the field, really doesn't have a whole lot of problems doing it, gets scored pretty quickly, and it's, oh, here we go again. Now the team's going to lose. That is, quite frankly, quite obviously, taking angst and anxiety and frustration from previous games, applying it to this one, right? Just like you do that as a human being, just like I do it as a media member sitting in the press box, the players, it's just part of human nature. They can try as they might. But I think that's really what it boils down to. And who knows? I don't know. Maybe Amon-Ra St. Brown came in and said, hey, it's going to be the same thing that happened with Seattle, or hey, enjoy that 5th loss we're about to give you. I don't know. But whatever it is, The frustrations are obviously boiling over. And quite frankly, to me, that is kind of the biggest concern, right? Like Dan Quinn has come out and said he's not concerned about losing the locker room. He's not concerned about the locker room turning on each other, turning on itself, or, guys losing the passion to go out there and compete and all these other things. And quite frankly, I'm with them. Like, I don't see that kind of a defeated locker room, dejected locker room when I go into it, even after a game like this. Like, obviously they're frustrated. Obviously nobody's happy. Nobody's in there, listening to pumped up music or anything like that. But certainly no messages of giving up, no, body language of giving up. Like, the eye contact is strong, all kinds of stuff. And no, that doesn't exist with every single football player you meet in this kind of a situation. But I do think the frustrations are mounting. They're stacking, and it's leading to some mistakes. It's leading to mental errors. It's leading to, lapses in judgment, like when you slap somebody across the face, right? And those things have to be reined in. They've got to be acknowledged. You can't just tell Daron Payne, like, hey, don't be frustrated. What do you mean don't be frustrated? Like, we're on a 5-game losing streak. Of course I'm going to be frustrated. So you got to acknowledge it. You got to go out and attack it the best way you can. I can't tell you how that is for Daron Payne. I can't tell you how it is for Javon Kinlaw. I know them to the extent that I know them, but I certainly don't know them as well as Daryl Tapp does, defensive line coach, or Sharif Floyd, assistant D-lines coach, or Joe Witt Jr., or anybody else. I don't know them. So, but the bottom line is you can't have that kind of stuff happening, because when that stuff is happening, this game is still relatively within reach. I know we're all kind of riding the roller coaster of, here we go again. Hold on, make sure your seatbelts are buckled, make sure the restraints are tight. But in the reality of the moment, the game is still within reach, right? The game is still salvageable. So you have to be able to find a way to funnel that energy into a positive direction. Speaking of positive directions, let's give a little bit of praise. Listen, I know, it's hard, 5-game losing streak. The Washington Commanders just got blown out again. But let's talk about this Marcus Mariota-led offense, because not expected to do a whole heck of a lot, but Mariota and this offense produced 3 scoring drives, multiple long touchdown drives, 75 yards, 69 yards, 81 yards. He made several big-time throws, a 41-yard completion to Jalen Lane, a 38-yard completion to Treylon Burks, a 30-yarder to Zach Ertz. Was effective on 4th down this week where they weren't effective on some other 4th downs, converted a 4th and 1. 4th and 3, scored a touchdown to Deebo Samuel. In fact, 2 plays that Cliff Kingsbury drew up, getting guys wide open in the end zone. I think that's something that can be built upon for the offense, because at the end of the day, like, this is a 3-phase operation. So we need to look at this thing as we break it down here objectively and try to be productive in the way that we talk about this team. Acknowledge the things that are good, and putting up 22 points. And again, could have been more points if you take the conventional extra points instead of having to try to go for 2 because you're so far behind. Really, you're looking at about a 24-point output. And for the most part, like I said, every single week, if you can score 24 points, then as an offense, you can go to bed at night saying, look, we did what we could do to give our team a fighting opportunity. Now, again, the defense has to come out and do their part, but I want to give a little bit of credit where the credit is due. Cliff Kingsbury was able to scheme some players open, which has not been the case all season long, especially without Terry McLaurin on the field, particularly on the longest touchdown drive of the game. There were multiple times where they were able to scheme some receivers open. However, there were still some drive-killing sacks. There were penalties, 2 Josh Connerly Jr. false starts, delay a game on an extra point, things like that. Certainly nobody's perfect coming out of this one and has plenty of things to clean up. But if this Marcus Mariota offense, whether it's another 2 weeks, whether another 3 games, I should say, not 2 weeks, because 2 weeks from now is bye week, but whether it's for another 2 games, 3 games, whatever it is, try to build a little bit of a rhythm, try to find a little bit of something, because I'm telling you right now, and again, I know a lot of fans out there don't want to hear it, but the Washington Commanders intend to come out and compete and try to be competitive every single week. So that's what you should expect from your Washington Commanders team. Nobody on this roster, nobody in this coaching staff is interested in laying down, rolling over, and preserving draft position, whether you, me, or anybody else likes it or not. So a little bit of praise for the offense. Obviously, a much bigger day hindering the future of this team with injuries. And, call it a skeleton crew, call it scraping the bottom of the barrel, whatever you want, man. I mean, look, the way that it's looking right now, and I don't want to get too catastrophic. Wow. I don't want to get too catastrophic with it. But the way it's looking right now, it looks like Jonathan Jones, Noah Igbenogany, and Mikey St. still are going to be your primary 3 corners, Antonio Hamilton behind them. And then we'll see if anybody gets elevated from the practice squad for the game against Miami. But that is not what it was intended to be here on this Washington Commanders defense this season. Speaking of the intentions, the middle quarter, the Washington Commanders actually tried to turn a little bit of a corner during the middle quarter of this game. Unfortunately, they weren't able to make enough ground up, and the Detroit Lions were actually able to kind of stand up to the effort, and ultimately it led them to the straightaway where they pulled away from this game, or in this game, for good. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends over there at Peloton. Look, folks, it's time to break through the busiest time of the year with a brand new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus that's powered by Peloton IQ. It's Peloton's most elevated technology and equipment yet that gives you real-time guidance, and it gives you endless ways to move, whether you want to work out by yourself or if you want to work out with your favorite instructor, like my personal favorite, Alex Toussaint. He always gets me fired up to tackle the day. And the thing I like about Peloton, it helps me achieve more in less times. They have features that help you plan, stay motivated, track your progress, and Peloton IQ also provides personalized workout plans and recommendations. That's something that I use right now during the busiest time of the year covering the NFL. They plan my workouts for me based on my mood, my vibe, and also my favorite instructors. So make sure you check it out and use it, because it also helps you correct your form in real time, and it maximizes your reps. It counts your reps so that you can do it smarter, safer, and more efficient. Let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
Today's episode of Locked On Commanders is also brought to you in part by Rippling. And if you're a business owner, here's the truth. SaaS promised to make work easier, but now the average company is buried under hundreds of apps that slow down your teams and simply just don't work together. That's not SaaS. That's just sad software as a disservice, and we know what it looks like to be sad when a bunch of operations aren't necessarily working together, and that's why you need Rippling. Rippling is the unified platform for global HR, payroll, IT, and finance all in one place. They've helped millions of businesses replace a mess of disconnected tools with one system designed to give leaders clarity, speed, and control. By uniting your employees, teams, and departments into one system, Rippling removes the bottlenecks, busyworks, and silos that your other software created. And right now you can get 6 months free when you go to rippling.com/lockedonnfl. Learn more at rippling.com/lockedonnfl. It's rippling.com/lockedonnfl for 6 months free. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen or view of the day. And thank you to all the everydayers, those of you who continue to come through every single day, and for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network in at least the country, if not the world. I'm pretty sure it's everywhere. Special thank you goes out to all the everydayers. Again, if you're new to the show, kind of weird finding a new podcast, but maybe you don't like the other one just screaming from the rooftop for no reason. Here on Locked On Commanders, we're not only going to talk honestly about the negatives that are going on. There are a lot of negatives. We're also going to try to move the conversation forward. We're not just here to yell for the sake of yelling, and we're not here to just break dishes for the sake of breaking dishes. If that is what you're into and that's what you're looking for, maybe you want to mix it up a little bit. I promise you there are places for you to go to get that. You're just not going to get it here. We're going to identify the negatives. We're going to talk about them. We're going to be honest about them. But we're also going to move the conversation forward. We're not just going to get stuck in the ugliness and the negativity. Speaking of ugliness, a little bit of ugliness, not total ugliness. Middle quarter, key takeaways. That's what we do here in the second quarter, every post game. The middle quarter, middle part of the second quarter, 7 minutes, 30 seconds left in the second quarter into the first half of the third quarter, 7 minutes, 30 seconds left in the third quarter. That is what we call the middle quarter. It's incredibly valuable. It's where halftime happens. It's where possessions change hands, and it's where a team can really get themselves back into a fight or take a fight and really extend. Unfortunately, as it usually tends to happen, the team that wins that middle quarter has a pretty good shot of winning the total game, and the Detroit Lions won this middle quarter, but not by a huge margin. It just helped lead into that huge margin. Detroit Lions come into the second or this middle quarter with a lead. They walk out with a bigger lead. They outscore the Washington Commanders 10-7 in that stretch. The Commanders offense did put together an impressive 10-play, 75-yard touchdown drive, but the defense, again, this lack of complementary football that we've been watching all season long, the defense collapsed almost immediately. They allowed the Lions to drive 64 yards for a field goal right before the half. You would love to give them some credit for buckling down there at the goal line, buckling down in the red zone, not giving up the touchdown, all those kinds of things. But the bottom line is you were in a situation where you had to get a takeaway, where you had to keep the Lions off the board before halftime. You give up the 3 points. You don't like doing that. And the fact that Quan Martin's unsportsmanlike conduct penalty comes into play here and kind of aids that effort. Then you flip it over, and this is where the downside of the middle quarter comes in if you don't win it, is that you give up a 5-play, 72-yard touchdown drive in under 3 minutes to start the second half. So the Detroit Lions essentially get a 1-1. They get 3 points at the end of one half. They get 7 points at the beginning of the next half. There's your 10 points. The Washington Commanders did get the one touchdown, but ultimately the lead grew. And again, it wasn't such a huge stretch, but I kind of liken it to racing. And if you're a NASCAR racing fan or an F1, all these things, please forgive me. I'm not a huge racing guy, but hopefully the analogy sticks. I kind of liken it to like you're entering into a turn. The Washington Commanders are behind the Detroit Lions coming into the turn, trying to make up a little bit of ground so that when you come out of the turn into the straightaway, maybe you can have some momentum, maybe you can get some things going. But ultimately, the Lions are able to keep the Commanders' car off of them and then come out of that turn, hit the gas, accelerate even more, and you end up with the results you do. Get another 20-plus point loss here at home for the Washington Commanders. Time to get to our good, bad, and our ugly observations. The good here, offensive resilience. It's really kind of the only thing you can really look at despite the injuries and despite the scoreboard. The offense kind of kept this team at least in the fight as long as possible. Obviously, ultimately, there comes a time where the differential is just too big. You see Marcus Mariota pulled. Josh Johnson gets put in. But Marcus Mariota did lead 3 separate drives, 75-plus, 69-plus, 81-plus yard drives in the game. Rookies stepped up a little bit. Jalen Lane had a 41-yard catch. Ben Sinnott scored his first touchdown of the season, second career touchdown. By the way, both of them from Marcus Mariota. So Ben Sinnott is apparently a Marcus Mariota guy. So that's our good. The bad, the secondary, not just the coverage. And truthfully, and again, I haven't watched the tape yet, but just kind of watching the game flow live in living color. Truthfully, I feel like the secondary actually did a little bit better today as far as not just giving up like the massive, like you had the turnover last week on the kickoff return by Jalen Lane. Then boom, right off the bat, you got a wide receiver running deep behind the secondary wide open for a touchdown. Now, it doesn't, I'm not saying they did good, ladies and gentlemen. I'm saying they did better from a very low bar to cross. So let's not get crazy on what that really means. But not as many wide open receivers, not as many wide open running down the field receivers. However, even with a little bit of good, and it's a very little bit of good, right? Trey Amos injury, Ale Cajo, again, not a DB specifically, but just another defender getting knocked out of this game. You're just running with the skeleton crew at this point for a secondary. And Noah Igbenogany gave up a 41-yard game to Jamison Williams to set up a field goal, and then was beaten again for a 22-yard gain and a 14-yard touchdown. The Washington Commanders secondary gave up. So again, not sitting here trying to say, again, the take is the bad take, right? So they did bad. It's not as bad as last week. And I don't really know how much that's really worth. That's like buying somebody a new car because they totaled their last car, they wreck it the very next day, they get it, and you say, well, at least you didn't total this one, right? That's about the best I can give you. The ugly takeaway is just the way this team is imploding, right? Honestly, like this version of the Washington Commanders is the most disappointing, the worst version of the Washington Commanders that I've seen in my years covering this team. And it hasn't been for nearly as long as a lot of you have been fans of this organization. I got it. But I'm also getting feedback from insiders, from other Commanders fans, from other media members who have been covering this team a lot longer than I have, that this in comparative to, in relation to what this team was supposed to be, what this team was going to be, all these things, this is just absolutely terrible. And again, injuries don't excuse everything. I do think the injuries definitely play a part. And I think that if you deny, whether you're a fan, whether you're media, like players and coaches in the middle of the battle, you can't acknowledge it because it doesn't do me any good. But if you're outside the battle like we are, if you don't at least acknowledge the fact that the injuries have an impact on what's happening on the field, I think you're being disingenuous and you're being unfair. However, that does not excuse everything that's going on the field, right? There's a difference there. And the missed assignments, the blown calls, the lack of communication, like there is a serious lack of educating. There's a serious lack of directing going on, right? Providing the purpose of what we're doing, the direction to do it, the motivation to do it, right? Something is lacking in that process. And ultimately, like we've said before, I know a lot of you want me to sit here and say Joe needs to get fired. Now some of you are sitting here saying you want me to say Dan Quinn needs to get fired. I'm not going to tell you any of those things. What I'm going to tell you is that things need to change. They need to change in a hurry. They tried to do that change by going down to the sideline. How effective that was, even in a macro level, I can't tell you. It is something I plan on asking Dan Quinn on Wednesdays. Like, hey, coming off the game, coming off the tape, where can you find benefits from Joey Jr. moving down to the sideline, and maybe see if we can't pull some of those threads. But obviously, coming out of the game on Sunday night, it's hard to really even think that any of those things are going to happen. But the personal fouls, the ejection by Daron Payne, this team is just collapsing in on itself. in pretty much every way you can imagine. I would, especially on defense. Total loss of composure, total loss of control. And listen, just given my background, when the troops don't have any composure, when the troops don't have control of their emotions, that is typically a leadership problem, and that's going to have to get fixed if the Washington Commanders are ever, whether it be 2026 or even beyond 2026, if they're ever going to get back on the path they were last year, that's got to get fixed without a doubt. We got 2 burning questions coming out of this game that we're going to look to address later on the week in Locked On Commanders. Those are coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders brought to you in part by FanDuel. NFL is rolling forward. Like it or not, win or lose or draw, the NFL is rolling forward. The NBA is also back, and there's no better place to get in on all the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss tip-off, even if you miss the start of the game, or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Host of the Commander Squad show here on the Locked On Commanders podcast channel, Nick Ashew, says that he loves those fourth quarter 3-point parlays or 3-point lines and prop bets and all those things. Me, I love myself same game parlay. I drop 5 bets for you guys at the end of every single week. This week, we hit 4 of our 5 parlays. We hit 4 of the 5 parlays. I actually made an extra bet, and it was a 3-leg parlay. Or we hit 4 of our 5 bets, I should say. Sorry. We did hit our parlay as well. I made an extra parlay just on my own for fun, and I got 2 of the 3 legs. I hit 2 of the 3 legs. The leg I didn't hit, Washington Commanders plus 20.5, which, if you don't know gambling terms, means that all the Commanders had to do was not lose by 21 points or more, and I would have won. You expand the expectations, yet somehow they still get missed. So anyway, the betting keeps everything exciting, especially when your team is trying to make a late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com, sign up today, and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Wrapping up today's post-game episode, Washington Commanders fall to the Detroit Lions, dropped to 3-7 on the season, 5-game losing streak, heading into Madrid, Spain, against the Miami Dolphins, who just put a whooping on the Buffalo Bills. So that is going to be fun to look forward to. Offensive burning question, defensive burning question. On offense, Marcus Mariota proved that he can execute the offense. He can lead scoring drives. So with Jaden Daniels out for at least 2 more games, we would assume, did Marcus Mariota show enough to give this team any chance at all to win in Spain? Did he do enough tonight, not in Spain, tonight to give the team any chance to win in Spain, or was it just chalked up to garbage time production? And I don't think it is. More of a softer defense, a little bit of a higher shell, those types of things. But I think Marcus Mariota was timely. I think he made some really good reads early on in the game, actually. And I texted this to our insiders. I actually thought he was making some riskier throws, and I was like, he can't get away with that all night. I need him to go away with that. He almost threw an interception. From that almost interception, he basically played a really clean game, really smart game. Going to go back and break down all the throws, all those things. Was kind of doing a lot of the veteran things you expect veteran quarterbacks to do. If you saw the Kurt Warner breakdown of Jaden Daniels, firstly, I don't think it's completely fair what Kurt Warner was saying about Jaden Daniels. However, he makes some really good points, as a Hall of Fame quarterback is going to. And I think Marcus Mariota was doing a lot of the things that Kurt Warner said he would like to see Jaden start doing again in the second year, if and when he does come back to the field, which I will tell you all right now. I know some of you don't want him to, but there is a possibility. I don't know. I'm not going to go likelihood, but there is at least a possibility that Jaden Daniels returns to the field this season. That's a topic for a different time. Defensive burning question, Dan Quinn. They went to some full speed practices this week. Joe Jr. moved to the sideline to help boost the energy. The results, 44 points allowed. Your defensive game captain, Daron Payne, ejected for fighting. This comes 1 week after he was seen, filmed, broadcast by WSA 9, having to be pumped up by Bobby Wagner to get back in the fight against the Seattle Seahawks. And he just had a total defensive collapse. It's beyond scheme. It's beyond talent. It's a leadership problem. Like, bottom line, it is absolutely a leadership problem, because when you have sound leadership, it's not a culture thing. When you have that sound leadership presence, you have at least a consistent execution of process, right? You can call it identity. You can identify what it is the Washington Commanders do. This defense does not have an identity, even more so than just the entire team. And again, if one part of your 3 phases has no identity. It's really hard for anybody in your team or your entire team to have an identity. But more than any, like when you talk about which parts of this team are up a creek without a paddle, the defense by far, it's not even up the creek. It's just in the creek. It's just soaked. It is just bogged down, drowning. There's not even a boat anymore. And then that is a huge problem that Dan Quinn is going to have to get fixed. He did say in his post-game press conference, no changes are coming before they go to Spain. Truthfully, you really can't make any changes before you go to Spain. Like, the last thing you want to do is fire a guy, get on an airplane and tell Ken Norton Jr. or somebody, hey, buddy, when we land in that other country, you're now the defensive coordinator. Good luck to you. No, we need to do that back home, maybe in the bye week. Who knows? My gut honestly says that nothing's probably going to happen until the offseason, but, we'll see how it goes because another 22-point loss and things can change very, very quickly. That's going to do it for today's episode. Next time on Locked On Commanders, we're going to try to answer some of those questions, and we're going to break down even more of what happened here in Week 10. As the Washington Commanders move forward to Spain, we will move forward to them with them as well. I will be leaving Monday night to go to Spain, so be a little bit flexible with me on the programming schedule this week, guys. We're going to get 5 episodes. I just don't know exactly what time they're going to drop, when they're going to drop, all those kinds of stuff. Insiders, I am 6 hours ahead of you starting Tuesday, basically. Starting Tuesday, I'm 6 hours ahead of you. So if that is going to be a problem, mute the thread, mute the text messages so that I don't wake you up at 2 o'clock in the morning with my 8 a.m. observations. In the meantime, if you got questions, if you got comments, you can text them directly to me. Become a Locked On Commanders insider at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. Although threatening to wake you up at 2 o'clock in the morning, probably not a great selling point, is it? So maybe next time, maybe after next week, you'll sign up to be a Locked On Commanders insider. For your next listen, get a double dose of Locked On NFL. Find out what the national media is thinking of Washington and every other franchise twice a day. Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you're listening to today's podcast. Every day, as I see you, I appreciate you every day, especially right now. And I thank you again for coming through for another episode. Till next time, everybody out there, please stay safe, be kind to one another, and we'll see you again real soon right here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.